Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the third AM virtual coffee morning. My name is Georgia. I'm Deputy Editor of Aesthetic Medicine, and I'm joined by Dr. Raj Thethi. Raj is an aesthetic doctor. He's owner of Skin Radiance Clinic in Leeds, and he is also on our AM editorial board. So he's great, basically. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. This is actually our first time using this new platform live for a webinar, so please do bear with us. You will all be muted and you'll all have your cameras turned off. If you want to ask any questions, if you just have a look down to on the right hand side of your screens, you'll be able to see there's a public chat pod, and then just next to that there's something called Q&A mode. Any kind of like hellos, or if anything isn't working, just general kind of housekeeping operational stuff, if you've got any problems hearing us or anything, if you want to just drop a message in the public chat. But if you've got any kind of more formal questions that you want to ask Raj, if you can put them in the Q&A mode, we will be keeping an eye on those to make sure that everyone's questions get asked. So hopefully we're ready to begin. Okay, so first of all, Raj, how are you? How's everything? What's been going on? Let's just check in.
Yeah, we're doing okay. We're doing okay, Georgia. Thank you. Firstly, thank you for inviting me to do this. It's very sweet of you. I really appreciate it. Feeling the love. Yeah, good. We're doing okay. We're doing okay. I think it's just very bizarre times and unprecedented. And I think Richard the last time said that he's never used the word unprecedented before, and I echo that, because I don't think I've never used the word unprecedented before, but I think this is worthy of that word. Unfortunately, we are in odd times, and we've obviously never experienced anything like this in our lifetimes. So we're just trying to cope day to day, manage day to day.
Yeah, and do you feel like now that we're maybe 5-6 weeks in, I guess, do you feel like it's gotten any kind of easier, or it feels any different just managing like day-to-day life? Like, do you think it's kind of become a bit more manageable, or does it still feel really bizarre?
I think it's becoming slightly less surreal now.
Yeah,
I think it was surreal for the first few weeks, because it was just so odd. We've never experienced anything like that, and I think now we're kind of coming to terms with it a little bit, and everyone's getting a bit tired and a bit frantic. And there's even stuff on the news where people are starting to use the roads again and stuff, and there's build up, which isn't exactly good, but it's probably inevitable. It's human nature that people get tired, but I think it's becoming less surreal. I think it's just becoming more of a reality, which is really sad.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess so. When did you actually close the clinic?
So we closed it before lockdown. I just before lockdown, I just said, it's not worth the risk to myself, my patients, my family, my friends. It's just not worth the risk. So I think we've got an ethical duty as healthcare professionals to do the best we can for our patients. And I just made that kind of ethical decision, and it wasn't even a decision. It was just a duty, really, a duty of care. That we have to stop procedures during this time, because they're non-essential at the end of the day. It's a want, it's not a need, and we had to draw the line. And the NHS has stopped far more serious needs. We are definitely a want, and I think we had to just before lockdown, I closed down my doors physically, and I tried to kind of cram in the last few patients who had larger procedures booked, because they're kind of ongoing treatment courses, because those were the ones that I was really, really conscious about. It's like I've done their upper face or something, and I haven't done anything in their lower face, and it's like, so we've got to try and get all those finished before lockdown, and I managed to do that. And then we've just had to apologize to everyone else and reschedule all the appointments. We've kind of moved to more of a virtual system now, so doing a lot of virtual consultations with my patients, as I'm sure you probably heard from your other people as well. And trying to manage everything online. But I think it's just it's a new landscape. It's a territory that we haven't really fully navigated before. And I think, I wish I'd bought more shares in Zoom or, in wherever this thing is.
Exactly. Yeah, I know exactly. It's funny, isn't it? Because whilst most like companies and businesses in the world are really, really struggling, there's just that select few that this is absolutely like a dream for.
Absolutely.
Oh, I just noticed in the chat, are some people having some issues with sound? Is everyone okay with sound? Can some people not hear us? We've got some.
Someone says I'm upside down.
Oh, is Raj upside down for everyone or just for that one lucky person?
It's my best side.
Your best side is upside down. Don't be so hard on yourself. We do have some moderators in some operational helpers in the chat. If I'm sure Chris is keeping an eye. Okay, most people are now saying it's all good. Okay, we'll carry on. Okay, yeah. So virtual consultations. What I've kind of been wondering when everyone's been talking about this, what does that actually involve? Like, how do you structure them? How do you, in terms of like how much you would charge for a consultation, is it the same as what you would do in clinic? Are you checking in with, what's the kind of ratio between checking in with existing patients and new patients? Like how does that kind of work?
So I mean, everyone's businesses are different and everyone needs to do whatever's right for them. My business was based mainly on Facebook advertising. So we've continued with some of that during this period of time. So I'm getting a new stream of patients. It's quieter. I haven't really done massive amounts, but we're just trying to do, in terms of new patients, I mean, we're just trying to kind of, if anyone's interested in having a consultation, we are planning in and scheduling a time with them and creating like an appointment, schedule, logging in, and then, we've had a few no-shows just because people forget and they've got lives and we're all doing crazy things. But then in terms of when we actually do it, I think the most important thing is that we don't kind of veer away from what we would normally do, because I think it's really important. Just because we're in a digital kind of platform, we still got to make sure we got basic security, patient information, GDPR, all those things have to be properly navigated. I think that's really important. I tend to just go through all of their personal details, make sure their medical history, and then basically try to work out what their issues are. And some of the issues we can deal with online, and it could be that I'm kind of funneling it more towards skincare at the moment, which is the only option we have. And then we've got other things, like we've got possible people who want procedures done, but obviously we don't know when that's going to be, and we're putting them on a waiting list and just adding them to the list of people to contact. I'm fortunate enough I have a secretary and she's amazing, and she does everything for me. She's like my fairy godmother, so I literally just kind of just prance about and just do the injecting and go home. But she does all of the hard work in the background. So she's
keeps everything running.
Keeps everything running. So the phone lines are still open, and I think that's quite important, because I think patients still may need you and they still may need contact. And I think if we didn't have that, I think that kind of leaves your patients in the dark a little bit. So she's still working, and this phone line is still on. So if people want to ring in and call, that we've at least got a port of call. We can access the clinic if we need to. Still accessible by email. So we're just trying to keep things running as much as we can. And in terms of existing patients, we're contacting those and making sure, reassuring them. As a doctor, I still feel like, yes, we've got an aesthetic duty, but we've also got still a medical duty. So we've just been asking them, making sure they're okay. Making sure if there's anything they need, are they worried about anything, have they got any questions or concerns? Because although I don't claim to be an expert in COVID at all in any way, shape, or form, we're slightly more informed than the average person who might not know or might be confused or anxious. So at least I can point them in the right direction or give them information if need be. So we've been helping out in that way. We're just trying to contact everyone, just make sure everyone's safe and everyone's okay.
And what platform have you been using for your online consults? Is it kind of
Zoom?
You've been doing Zoom, I
think
is it difficult to, if you were actually doing like a like a physical assessment of someone's skin, can that be quite difficult if someone hasn't got the right lighting?
Yes.
Yeah, because that's what I've been thinking must be really tricky.
Contacting some patients, and they've been like, I don't know, in like freaking Narnia or something, like in a cupboard, and I'm like, I can't see anything, and they're like, oh, can you see this line here? Can you see this line? I'm like, I can't see jack.
Yeah.
I was like, you need to move. We need to see some good light, and then they go near the window, and then their signal cuts out or something. It's been a bit hit and miss.
It's tricky.
But you know, it's just part of what we have to deal with now, isn't it? So we're doing our best. We're doing our best.
Do you think it would be helpful for would you kind of advise like fellow practitioners who are thinking about doing online consults? Is it helpful to perhaps say to your patient beforehand, like give them some little tips about how they can get the best lighting?
So I just said, natural light is fine. Like I'm just sat near a window now. There's sunlight coming in, and just trying to. But some of the skin problems, even sometimes you get a bit pixelated, and it's a bit difficult. You can't really see what the problems are. But as long as they can explain the issue to you, and you can assess most things digitally, but there are some things that you can't, and there are some issues. People who are wanting dermal fillers or skin procedures and stuff like that, you can't fully assess people online. It's not possible. You need to feel the tissues. You need to know how they move and what the vectors are and what's happening with the with the various layers of anatomy, and you can't do that online. It's not possible. As much as patients can try to do they all just want that.
Yeah, of course.
So.
But you're like, I can't just take your word for it.
No, which is great, but at the end of the day, it's not something that we can we can fully assess online. So I think we're trying our best, but in the present situation, for those people, we're saying you'll probably need to see me in person afterwards, but this is an estimate, or this is an approximation of what we may need in order to solve your problems.
Yeah, and actually, speaking of filler, someone has asked if you're still injecting.
No, not at all.
No,
absolutely not.
No,
I think it would be incredibly silly to do so. I think it's unethical, and there's no one should still be injecting, right? At all. No one should be injecting.
I did. I actually saw something. Either the Times or the Telegraph did a piece about some injectors had been breaking lockdown rules and had been still going to see patients, whether or not they were from the medical community or from the non-medical community, I don't know. But we would kind of say from an AM point of view, don't go out and inject patients.
No.
And also, as you were saying, you can always, you can get your patients on a waiting list for when you reopen. You could even start prepping them, I guess, with appropriate skincare, perhaps, if that would be relevant.
On that point, the pharmacies have been really, really helpful, and they've done a few things that have been helpful and in this unprecedented time. They're changing the way that they're doing their deliveries. They're delivering straight out to patients' houses, which is really helpful. So we can have a consultation on the phone, and to reduce the risk of COVID for a package coming into it's not going to the clinic because the clinic's closed. It'd be coming to my house, and then I would then repackage that and send it out to the patient. There's a huge extra added risk of that. So now they're just going straight to the patient's houses, straight from the pharmacy. So the pharmacy, they'll arrive at the patient's house, and we can organise a second call. And then I can tell them how to use it, and it's been quite helpful with that. So they've been very reliable with that, actually, and it's nice to see that they're accommodating. Yeah,
massively. And so, do you have an e-commerce platform on your site? Like, if a patient just wanted to order skincare, how would they do that? Would that always come from you putting that order in?
I think so. People work in different ways. Some companies have got online systems, like Illumia MD have got an online system where they can patients can just reorder things that they want, and that's fine. Personally speaking, I'm not, and this is no disrespect to Illumia, but I'm not a huge fan of that. I think with regards to skincare, I think sometimes the patients need to check in with me, and I need to know how they're doing, and the prescription can change whenever we meet. And I say, actually, we need to keep your skin on its toes a little bit, and I don't think just keeping you comfortable and keeping you safe is not always the good thing. We need to actually push the boundaries a little bit, especially now in lockdown, when no one really needs to see you that much, so you can you can push the boundaries a little bit. And I think my chosen skincare range is Zeo Skin Health by Dr. Zainab Baji, and we can go really hard or we can go really soft. And I think a lot of my patients are pushing more towards the harder end a little bit now, just because they can.
Especially the retinol, you can kind of step up and push a bit more, can't you?
Retinols, and we're really kind of pushing some of the peeling. So not physical in-house peeling in the clinic, but home peeling, and that's something that we're pushing quite a lot, which is quite nice. And they can have some really nice results and try to get rid of some of the photo damage while we're kind of locked indoors.
Cool. Okay, so what else have you been doing, like instead of as well as thinking about your own business and running the clinic from home and everything, what else have you been doing, like, in the industry? Because I've seen you popping up on this webinar, this scheme, this initiative. You've been active. So what have you been doing for the community?
So I think I'm part of the National Teoxane faculty. So I'm a regional expert for Teoxane, which is a company that it's an aesthetic company that make dermal fillers as well as skincare and other things as well. So we've obviously taken an initiative. Teoxane UK has been incredibly supportive and has done weekly webinars and sometimes even more than once a week, actually, nationally and internationally, to try and promote education in this time, because everyone's sat at home and people are worried and they're anxious. So even if it's just to try and improve people's kind of background knowledge of things, and just a time when we can come back to it, so they're doing weekly webinars, and so I was involved in one just a few weeks ago on the lower third of the face. So it was like a kind of an hour and 40-minute long webinar. There was an expert, Dr. Raul Cheto, was doing like a extended session on the lower third, and then we were part of the expert panel, answering questions and kind of throwing in our 2 pence. And then so that's been doing it formally, and then kind of more, not informally, but separate to that, I've been doing my own webinars on my Facebook page and Instagram lives with colleagues as well, which has been quite fun. So we're just trying to promote, trying to change the topic a little bit, because everywhere is just COVID at the moment. So it's true, isn't it? That's kind of, I think, what we've been thinking as well, and offering people that if they want to go and get that formal education from kind of more structured webinars with some of the brands, then great. But it's nice to also give people an option just to have a chat on a bit more of a personal level and talk about something other than how everyone has had to how everyone's panicking and freaking out, which I think has calmed down a little bit. I think the first few weeks it was very much like, oh my god, panic stations. Cool. So with your own sessions that you're doing, who are some of your colleagues that you've had on to chat with? So it's mainly been like other aesthetic colleagues. So I've done one with Rachel Goddard, who I'm sure you know.
Yeah,
she was a presenter as well at Aesthetic Medicine Live.
Yeah.
Was it? I can't even remember what year this is.
February. It was February. It was before the world turned upside down. It was just, we managed to get in just before.
Was that last year? I don't know anymore. I don't know anything.
February.
I don't know what's happening. I honestly feel like January, February, March have been 3 separate years. I've got no idea what the hell's going on. But yeah, somewhere earlier in the year.
At some point in history.
In the olden days.
Yeah, exactly.
We were at Aesthetic Medicine Live at one point, and she was the chair for the meeting, actually. So we done one with her, and that was really lovely. And we've done one with Amy Bird, who's another aesthetic nurse prescriber. Yeah. She's based over in Sandbach. And who else have I done it with? I'm planning a few more as well. There's a few more in the pipeline. But just with other aesthetic colleagues, just seeing how people are coping, similar to this, really, just a chat, and then maybe trying to focus on a certain aspect that we're trying to talk about or try to focus on for our patients.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, fab. So when life does start getting back to normal and when clinics can reopen, do you have kind of like a plan of how you're going to start that process again, or is there anything perhaps you've been thinking about and maybe analysing that you want to change and do business a little bit differently? Like, are you kind of thinking about that yet, or how you're going to manage that?
Yeah. So there's been, I mean, from leaders in the field, there's been a few initiatives. There was a webinar done by several kind of key opinion leaders in aesthetic medicine, including Arthur Swift and Kate Goldie, and there was a few. It was about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, and some American injectors as well. They were all international injectors on there, and they were talking about, you know, when this is all over, how are we going to restart? And everyone was under the impression that it's going to be really difficult. Not only the timing, we don't know when this is going to happen, but when it does happen, without the vaccine being in place, this is going to be incredibly difficult, because you're going to have a situation where you're only going to be allowed, you know, there's going to be a huge flurry. They found this after World War II. There was like a huge upsurge in the sales of cosmetics, and people want to look and feel good because they've just come out of this depressive, recessive state, and there's going to be a huge boom. That's inevitable. We know it's going to happen. But as healthcare professionals, we've got a moral code and an ethical duty to make sure that even in those times of, you know, milk and honey, when those times come, we need to be very, very careful and be very, very cautious as to how we go about doing our business. And by that, I mean, we have to set strategic things in place to make sure that we still are adhering to social distancing. Only kind of one person in the clinic at one time, deep cleans before and after each patient, limited amounts of time near the face. So you got to try and really be careful, wearing the full protective PPE, making sure that you know, all the surfaces are cleaned and the patient stay as safe as possible. You got to do constant risk assessments to make sure that patients are safe, and it's going to be very difficult because people are going to be in a situation where they are financially slightly more rocky. It's always going to be inevitable, and people are going to be tempted to kind of go, oh, we've had all these bookings, let's crack on and, you know, get revenue in. But I think it would be very foolish to do so, and there will be an upsurge of cases again if those kind of things aren't adhered to, if we don't follow the guidelines. We don't have any guidelines at that time. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen, but unless there's a vaccine in place and things start to reopen, I would be incredibly hesitant, because I think it's just going to be, you're going to have to think about everything completely differently. And it's going to be one person in, one person out, and it's going to be very, very peculiar with very different. I mean, we do cleans after every patient anyway, but to the level of stuff that we're doing, you know, and there's going to be a risk. You're going to expose yourself if you haven't had it. And even now, they're not sure. There's people who recently in the news, they found that people aren't forming antibodies after actually having an infection. So you could become reinfected potentially. That's not 100% proven yet, but there's evidence to show that potentially. So we don't know this is such a bizarre disease, and it's such a bizarre condition. When things do reopen, we're going to have to completely rethink our strategies, because if we continued the way we were, we are going to be a driving force for mass infection. Because we're close, similar to dentists, we're close to people's faces. Sometimes we're working for longer periods of time. Some of my appointments are like 2-3 hours. When I'm doing a larger dermal filler case, like I'm at massive risk. You know, close contact is if you're within 2 meters for more than 15 minutes. That's a possible, close contact, and we're definitely doing that. So I think it's turnover will need to go straight down in terms of the patient turnover. And you know, you'll need to be really, really careful as to how we operate, because we've got a massive ethical responsibility.
And are you confident that within the community, like you said, this and the initial webinar where they were talking about all this, with kind of real big thought leaders in the industry, are you confident that we will be able to come up with workable solutions together as a community to start to make this happen and to start to regain businesses as we go forward? Like, whilst it might be uncertain at the moment, do you think that we'll be able to get there?
I hope so. But the problem is that there's no regulation.
Yeah.
So there's no common kind of watchdog or no policing as to how we go about it. So it will be down to individual initiative, and a lot of people, I'm sure, will follow what they think is going to be best practice, but some people won't. And that's going to be inevitable. It's the same with anything. But we have to just make sure that we, amongst Facebook forums and try to raise awareness of what we should and shouldn't be doing. But down at the bottom line is obviously there's going to be government advice and we have to follow that. But in terms of reopening businesses and how and when to do that, the government can't give advice for every single separate industry. It's going to be impossible. So people do need to take their own initiative, but people will do what people want to do, unfortunately. So I think we have to work together to try and raise awareness about it. But unfortunately, it's one of those things where the message may not always get to certain people, or they may choose to ignore it. So we have to be prepared for that.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that's like anything really, is that we always try and promote best practice in the industry in every area. And I guess, some people will adhere to it. Hopefully most will, and others won't. Okay, well, that's quite depressing. So just finally, let's talk about some nice things. We've been asking people what they are really grateful for at the moment. And any kind of positives that have come out of this for you. So let's talk about some nice things. I mean, I know you have 2 small, super cute children, and I'm guessing you're spending more time with them now than you were before. So hopefully you'll say that's a positive. Maybe not.
I think this time has made us really pull back and appreciate the things that are important in life, and we in our house we had a bit of a COVID scare at one point, and we've really so I'm a very traditional Indian family. I live with my parents are here, I'm here, my wife, my kids, and my brother as well. So we all live together in an extended family, and it suddenly made me appreciate how important family is, because I think it's it's that time where you think you're potentially going to lose something that makes you, it makes the heart really crave it even more. And I think it's spending this precious time with the kids, doing baking with them, getting paddling pools out, and spending time with them in the garden, and I don't know, just watching their faces, making little videos of them, and I think that's been completely invaluable. And we are in a way fortunate because, in terms of generations, we may never have a time again when we're at home with our families for this long. So I think we have to be thankful for that. It's almost a blessing in disguise. We've spent more time with our family now than I think I ever have, So I've got 2 kids. I've got a little 3-year-old who's turning 4 in July, and she's bouncing off the walls. And then I've got a 11-month-old who's turning 1 on the 1st of May. So he's learning to walk a little bit at the moment. So although we're trying to Dettol everything, it's, he's licking the walls, and it's difficult to manage. So me and my wife are trying to do our best at the moment, but it's I think that's probably the one thing I would take away is the time and all the memories that you kind of create with the ones you love. And that's not to say that if people live alone, that can be really tricky at this time. And I think it's really hard. It's really tough if online if this is the only interaction that you have with people, it can be really, really tough. And looking after mental health is so important. And I've been on the edge a little bit. I'm not going to lie. It's been really tricky at points in the last few weeks. And
have you found anything that helps you to kind of get back from that? Like, what's your kind of like toolkit for when you are feeling rocky mentally?
So I've been using apps on my phone like Calm, and
Yeah.
I think that really does help. I've never really been a huge fan of meditation or anything like that, but I think as medics we tend to just not laugh things off a little bit, but we're slightly more blasé about those kind of things. But I think actually in recent times, I think there's been a lot more awareness about mental health and our attitudes towards it, and I've come round to trying to spend more time appreciating the here and now, appreciating that today is okay, we are doing okay, and taking day by day, because I think that's just something that we have to do at the moment, because it's a tunnel, and tunnels have ends. This isn't a black hole. This is a tunnel, and there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel. We just don't know how long the tunnel is. So, but we're just trying to take it day by day, and but spend time with the ones you love, and just do the things you can. And we were talking earlier about, if things you can do, or hobbies. People have bought like random things on the internet, and so we've bought we bought a paddling pool, we bought loads of toys for the kids and stuff, and they're playing outside in the garden, and we're trying to enjoy things as much as we can. But I think it's just trying to.
I think that's a really important message, is that like you said, it's not a black hole, it is a tunnel, and we will get through it. And I think actually it's nice because we are all being forced to take every day one day at a time, and every moment one moment at a time. And it's the kind of first time I can ever remember where you're not feeling this pressure to, perform above and beyond, or overachieve, or be super productive. Because you kind of can't, and it's quite nice.
No. And I think that's really important. There's something called the hierarchy of needs. I don't know if you've heard of that at all before.
Yeah.
But there's a pyramid. There's a pyramid with various levels.
Clarifying.
That's not even a pyramid. There's a pyramid of needs, and our most basic needs are food, water, and shelter. After that, there's security and safety. After that, it's the things that are on top of that, things like our wants and desires and stuff like that. And at the top is actualization, so you living your full potential. If you look on social media, it's very easy to suddenly feel a bit downtrodden, because you see people kind of taking up new instruments and doing all these things and doing really well, and that's fine, that's okay. But at the moment, I need to take it day by day. And I think we are at the moment we're at the bottom of the triangle, we're at the bottom of the pyramid, and we need to. It's okay if you just take it day by day, and you didn't learn a new skill today. That's okay. That's fine.
Exactly.
We're just trying to cope, and we're just trying to manage it day by day, and then slowly, hopefully, when all this shifts, we'll eventually regain some kind of normality.
Yeah, and hopefully take some of these things that we're experiencing and learning at the moment. We'll hopefully take them with us. And just on that, I wanted to say, if anyone doesn't follow Raj on Instagram at the moment, follow him, because he does regularly post videos and cute pics of his children, who are super cute, and I'm sure will help brighten your day if you're having a rubbish day. That was kind of everything I wanted to talk to you about. I don't know if anyone has any questions, feel free to type them in before we log off. Raj, what are your socials if anyone wants to follow?
So my business Facebook page is called Skin Radiance Clinics, and my Instagram handle is it's @ and then doctor, so just dr.raj.thethi, which is THETHI.
Cool.
So I just use Instagram and Facebook.
Fabulous. I think someone's typing a question. Let's see. I'm putting loads of pressure on that person now.
The 3 dots have appeared.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this, can't you, Raj? But Richard Bannister says, thanks, Raj. I personally think testing is going to be key, clients prior to booking as well as staff. But this is something that I personally am quite confused about, because I don't know if you're any clearer with the information, Raj, but it seems like we were sort of being told weeks ago that tests would be becoming available imminently, but to like frontline workers, or to NHS staff, key workers. Would you know what's happening with that, or when we're perhaps likely to be able to see them rolled out to the general public?
So there's two types of tests. We've got to be really clear. There's something called a PCR test that tests for the antigen, which means that it will test for the active virus, and that's normally a nasopharyngeal swab. So they take a sample at the back of the throat with a swab, and then they do a sample in the nose as well with the same swab. That tests for the active virus, and that will take about normally 3 to 4 days to come back in order to get a result. Sometimes it can take there can be quicker turnarounds, but our average is about a few days. That will test for the active virus. The other type of test is the antibody test, and that is basically looking at there's two types of antibodies that form against the virus. There's two types of antibodies. There's antibody M and antibody G. So antibody M is the one that forms in the initial phase when you're fighting the infection. And in the first few weeks, normally kind of 10 days or so, you should really see the antibody M forming, and that's your body forming an active reaction and fighting the active infection. And then slowly over a few weeks, that will taper off, and the antibody G will take over. And antibody G is the longer term antibody. So the antibody tests will be testing for the M and the G to see if you've got active infection or if you've previously infected. And the current the throat one will be testing for active virus. The problem is that the active throat one, in some people it can be falsely negative. So it depends on how well someone takes a swab. It can be negative. And lots of colleagues who I've worked with previously, some of them, I've got anaesthetist colleagues who said that they've had patients who've had negative throat swabs and then they've still gone and developed COVID. And it's only when they've put a tube down the throat to work out actually that they've got the active virus in their throat, but not in the swab. So it's very peculiar. The antibody tests are the ones that we're going to potentially roll out, but the problem is that they're not completely secure in terms of their reliability. So it just depends on when we've got more reliable testing. And I think some countries have got it down a lot better than us, and they've got better systems in place. I don't know when that's going to get rolled out properly to the UK. I think it's very difficult. I think it's as you said, so it says testing is going to be the key clients prior to booking as well as staff. I agree that testing would be helpful, but I think even with testing, there's always going to be false negatives, or false positives, or even both. So not false positives, sorry, false negatives definitely. So you could miss something, and there's still going to be a risk there. I think that will play a part as to how we roll things out again. But there's also ethical questions as to that, as to whether people who have had the antibodies, are they going to be treated differently to how people who haven't? So there's an ethical question there as well in terms of what you're going to allow people who've had the disease to do and what they're able to do rather than people who haven't. So we have to cross those bridges when we come to them. But it's obviously an unknown, and it's internationally an unknown at the moment.
Yeah, completely. And I think it's confusing because when an initial piece of information comes out, either directly from the government or in the press, because things are changing so rapidly, you may be holding on to a bit of information that you heard, say, 2-3 weeks ago, but then you kind of haven't had a chance to catch up and get an update on that. And
it's rapidly changing. It's rapidly changing.
Yeah, completely. I mean, I'm just wondering how it would even work in terms of, say you were requiring your clients to be tested before they came in for an appointment, you would then have to know what the date that they tested and how.
And there's nothing stopping them getting infected between the testing and coming to. Yeah,
exactly.
So exactly. And you can be a silent carrier. You can be asymptomatic. So a recent, I can't remember exactly where it's from, but a recent study one of my friends was showing me that 50% of people who've got it are completely asymptomatic.
Yeah, which is crazy. That it's just so.
So I could have it right now without knowing it, and you don't know. But I could be passing it on, and I don't want that situation where I give a risk to my patients, because that's
exactly.
Part of medical ethics. The number one rule in when I stood up at graduation and I took the Hippocratic Oath, the first rule is do no harm.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's the thing we have to live by. It's the first rule of medical ethics, is do no harm. And if I have a situation where I'm creating more risk than benefit, then I have to stop whatever I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly. I've just had a message come in from Fiona about hospitals in South Korea.
Ooh.
Doing an elective surgery test 1 day prior to admission and discharge, so that patients being admitted are free from infection, so that any infection stream can be traced. I guess that's it, isn't it? It's being able to trace the kind
so just
of stream.
People who can't see the question, she's just saying that in Korea, it's Fiona Harper. Thank you, Fiona, for your message. It just says Korea hospitals doing elective surgery test 1 week prior and 1 day prior to admission and on discharge, so patients being admitted are free from infection, so that any infection stream can be traced. Adaptation of this may be needed and considered for outpatients too. I completely agree, but we're going to have to think of something, because we can't sit on our bums forever. There has to be a way out. I personally think a vaccine is the only way that we're really going to see this play out properly. But that's going to be a while off yet. And Rich was saying, was trying to be positive, as I cannot see how we can work with PPE. I also feel our staff may be concerned about being 100% safe, even if the government gives the get-go. But but great answers. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. I think we've also, people with larger clinics, we've got an ethical responsibility to our staff as well. And when we get going, we've got to make sure that it's safe for the people, because they've got families, they've got kids and loved ones. So it's not just about what we want, it's about what's safe for everybody. And that's not just the patients, but also our staff as well. And we've got to keep them as safe as possible. So I completely agree with what you're saying.
I imagine it probably will have to be, as you were saying earlier, that, it gets people, perhaps the staff, get reintroduced to clinics on a kind of 1 in, 1 out basis, or slowly, so that everyone isn't back at the same time. Do you have any other injectors in your clinic, Raj?
No, I'm the only one. I'm the only one. I'm
so you're the kind of sole practitioner.
Yeah. So it's kind of nice in some ways, but can be lonely in others. But I think it's nice in the fact that it just means that I've got my secretary who's actually she's watching at the moment, and she's been helping me remotely. But in terms of in the clinic, I've got less headache because I don't have all those people to look after. But I know that other practitioners have got huge burdens of trying to look after all of their employees as well, and that can be really, really difficult.
Absolutely.
Let's try and end on a positive note, Georgia. So why don't you tell me something that you've gained from this, something positive from your side?
Oh, nice. Well, the last time someone asked me this on our first coffee morning session, I said the thing that I'm most grateful for at the moment is my housemate, but I'm not going to say her again, because I don't know if she can hear me, and she'll probably start getting a little bit too confident. So instead, I'm going to say this sounds so cliche, but I'm so grateful for nature at the moment. I know that sounds so lame, but where I live in southwest London, and it's just very nice and suburban and leafy. But of discovering like new little parks and just lovely streets nearby, just to actually get out. I never just go out and walk. But spring has sprung. I feel so much happier when the sun is out. I'm a summer baby, so it just kind of gives me life when it's warm, the sun's shining. So just being outside in nature and quiet and hearing the birds sing, I just feel like I'm finding it's really, really rejuvenating and really calming and centering. And that's kind of my meditation at the moment, is just being outside. I live in a block of flats, but there's a communal garden out the front, and even just sitting out there with my book and a beer, not during work time, obviously, after work, it's just lovely. Centering and rejuvenating, and that's something that I'm definitely going to try and take with me after this, is if I have free time, not to try and fill it necessarily, but just to go outside and be with myself and be with nature.
Yeah, I think we have to be very thankful that this lockdown has happened in this time of year.
Absolutely.
Rather than if it was like November, December, I think it would be awful.
Absolutely awful. Absolutely awful.
But I think, so we've got a lot to be thankful for.
Yeah, we do, massively. I think there might be one more question coming in from Richard, one comment, and then we will go. Thank you, Raj. Thank you, Richard. Really good to hear from another clinic owner. Great info. Take care, you both. Thank you very much, Richard. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. You've got Raj's socials. We are on Aesthetic Medicine Live on YouTube. Thank you. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and the website. So if you want to sign up for future coffee mornings, you can do so on the website, and then you'll get an email before they happen. Next one is going to be on Monday. That's going to be over on IG Live. But we'll keep in touch and let you know everything that's going on. And yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Raj. It's been a pleasure as always.
No worries. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. All right. Well, take care, everyone, and enjoy your weekends.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye. Bye.